It's so nice to have all of you here today at this webinar. Thank you for joining us. It's the nwu-pukke Chamber of Commerce webinar on keeping it together in the workplace. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Geerpie, and I'm happy about two things today. One is, of course, the webinars and the speakers that we have here, and the other would be getting dressed, and going somewhere. My pants, keeping things together, and clothing, etc. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to talk a little bit about business and what we experience and what we are challenged with in the workplace. I'm very fortunate to have two experts here to join us on the webinar today. Professor Lene Graupner, Deputy Director, School of Industrial Psychology and Human Resource Management of the NWU. Lene, thank you so much for coming in and joining us with your expertise today. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, and I have shoes on and not slippers.
Shoes, it feels funny. Can you see the shoe? We won't show the shoes now. And then also from the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce, we have one of the board members here today, Antoinette Hoog-Hiemstra. She's a chartered accountant. She's involved with ProPlan Technologies. That's the business she's involved in, but she's here in her capacity as a board member of the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce. Antoinette, thank you so much for being with us today.
Morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so our aim is to talk a little bit about two areas of keeping it together, and we have the two people here who will be able to expand a little bit on it. The first one is more towards the industrial psychology side of it, and what we do as human beings in the workplace now. We'll try to get to a point where we say, all right, let's equip and empower managers with keeping it together in the workplace now, and what we encounter. And then later on, I'll also ask Antoinette, as a chartered accountant, listen, what are the specific business interventions and managerial interventions that we can get to in this day and age? So I think the first topic we need to deal with is the keeping it part of keeping it together in the workplace. And Lene, from your side, I mean, if we start talking about what we have now, the context that we're dealing with, and what people experience now in the workplace, what do you think? What are your perspectives? And specifically so, in my encounters, I hear people talk a lot about managing anxiety, the uncertainty of it all. It's a difficult situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, Geerpie, the fact is we are finding ourselves in a very strange world, and this happens very abruptly. We are in unprecedented, uncharted waters worldwide. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think lately what employees and organizations experience is a lot of change, a lot of adjustments. And yes, that ultimately leads to anxiety, stress, burnouts, uncertainty. There's rumors of the pandemic, how it comes and goes, even a second wave. Then there's the result of that, the economic crisis that we actually find ourselves in, and we don't really know the extent of it and how large it is. So yes, the context now currently is that it is an anxious context in the workplace.
And it has a significant impact on the individual.
Yes.
On what we see and experience.
Yeah, definitely. On the each individual, I think, the manager right through to the employee, the clients, the customers, each individual has a unique perspective on this situation that we are finding ourselves in.
Yeah, you see, change is always difficult. I mean, if any process of change you have to go through and how you manage that. Now we are in a position where the change is not just on a conceptual basis or an idea or getting used to perhaps a new environment, the change impacts on our income.
Yeah.
It has a knock-on effect to what we experience at home.
Yeah, the routine changed, and life as we know it changed completely. And there's a feeling of, are we really going to go back to normal? And what is the new normal? Everybody talks about the new normal. There's a lot of people that say, no, we will go back to normal as we know it. But now we hear it might even go into next year, the wearing of masks and so on, the changes. So, yeah, so I very much like the topic, keeping it together. I think in the 3 words, there's a lot we can say. I can basically, if I can share, if we look at the keeping, the first word, keeping, the question is what are we keeping together? So if we look at the concept keeping, it actually means to maintain and to protect. And I very much like this framework that Mark Roberge of the Harvard Business School proposed. And what he said is as we know it, we have the human aspect in work and we have the business aspect. But he says we need to look at the transition between the two. So if you look at the human aspect, it might be that our employees are surviving, coping, and we need to ask, are they healthy? Are they doing okay? Are they fine? What is their emotional well-being like? The ethics of care of an organization, the role towards the employee, so that we can move towards them thriving again, if I can say it like that. So if you want to go to business as usual, there's a transition, Mark Roberge says, and that is we need to evaluate. We need to pause and ask the employee, are you okay? We need to assess, how are you really doing and what can we do to help you? So that if you say, yes, I'm fine, I did this and this intervention, you are helping me, then I can say, okay, now, is the job being done? What is the bottom line? Do we need to make adjustments now to help you to reach your task agreement? And what is your commitment and what is mine? So the keeping part, I would say, very much speaks to this framework.
So, Lene, before we continue with from our thought process from here onwards, I always say this in crisis communication. When people want to deal with a crisis and they don't have things in place that should be in place, like, for instance, your corporate values. One of the things you mentioned there would be ethics. How an organization sees ethics and how that value is unpacked. If you've done your homework and things are in place, it's so much easier to help people with the transition.
Exactly.
Many people also say we work in a creative environment or we are innovative. We are open for change. But then when change comes, there's no groundwork.
Yeah, and we fall flat on our face. A lot of creativity gets lost. We mentioned values. This is so important because I think the values that companies portray now comes to the test. Are we really who we say we are? What is the bottom line principles that we are applying? Are we looking after our employees? Are we providing security? Are we providing commitment? Are we committed? And also the values of the employee. What are they bringing to the company? So if we say ethics, it's a word that we like to throw around, but it's a very strong basis, a baseline that we need to fall back on now.
I mean, Antoinette, and to come to you now, for a business to thrive, it implies that there's a corporate culture, an environment created that is open for these sort of discussions to happen. And it's often when you are in business, you are so driven towards the bottom line and getting your business processes running, etc. Then it's difficult to go back and try to address values that should be in place when you've not done so.
No, I think I agree with you, GP. I think what we've realized in business during this time, which is very important, is that you must have your ducks in a row. You need to be compliant with SARS, you need to be compliant with the Department of Labor, because one of the main things we were able to do for our employees was to claim from TASH, which is the Temporary Employee Relief Fund. And if you are not tax compliant, and if you are not compliant with the Department of Labor, then a lot of companies struggled with that process. I mean, even we struggled with that process. It has been at times a very difficult process to get those applications through and paid. It's really a process where businesses and employers need a lot of resilience to make sure. Sometimes you need to resubmit applications to actually get that payments through to us. That also comes back to do as companies to do the right thing.
Antoinette, we'll come back to the specifics a little bit later on, but you've touched on it now. It's not only the values that needs to be in place, the environment created, to manage that transition. It's also a few other things that speaks directly to I would say the financial management of a business, right? So we'll get to that in a moment. Lene, speak to us a little bit more about how we deal with this environment now.
Yeah, so we touched on it initially, and that is what employees experience now mostly is an feeling of anxiety. And that brings me to the second word, the it. What is the it that employees really can experience or present now? If we look at the slide, it can be anything from a crisis, a traumatic experience, stress, obviously, I think that goes without saying, and even burnout. So just to recap, if we look at what a crisis is, it says it's an experience of a difficulty which temporarily hinders one's ability to employ problem-solving capacities, but it exceeds a person's current resources and coping mechanisms. And this can last for a few days, even up to a few months. For example, a natural disaster such as a flooding. And I think what we initially thought was that COVID-19 presented as a crisis. We heard about the rumors in China, and later we heard now it's coming closer and closer. And now what I think what's happening is it can even present as a traumatic experience, where a traumatic experience is a traumatic event that's more severe than a crisis, and it has a more unpredictable onset. It also involves an individual experience being confronted with actual or threatened death. It can be your own, a threat to yourself or to others. And we are actually witnessing this. We are seeing persons in hospital. We're hearing rumors of persons dying alone, not being able to greet their family members, which brings me to the collective trauma that I think we are presenting currently, even worldwide. And this is a psychological reaction to a traumatic event that affects the whole society, and in this instance, the whole world. It changes the way people perceive the world and understand their relationship, and it disrupts our global sense of well-being and meaning. And what I also saw here is what research says is collective trauma is characterized by extreme vigilance and a compulsive attention to threats. Now, if you think of what we read and we hear in the media, how people react towards bad news, there's an extreme reaction of this threat, which makes me think we are actually in a collective traumatic experience. If I can continue, there's burnout. I think a lot of employees present with burnout now. And if you're wondering if you have it, most probably feeling exhausted, cynical, not feeling efficient in the work, a loss of meaning, a lack of control, increased mental distance. You just cannot worry what's going to happen tomorrow. We hear a lot about Zoom fatigue. We even joke about it, but it's actually serious. This happens. Compassion fatigue. And I recently read about COVID chronic fatigue syndrome. People who had COVID is actually chronically feeling tired. And this, as I see it, this is the it that our employees are representing in the workplace.
You've mentioned before that once you started with talking about the definition of a crisis and so on, we with myself also, I thought, no, it's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
It won't last that long. We'll go into a heavy lockdown.
Yeah.
And then basically fortnightly or on a monthly basis, we'll move to lower levels.
We're released.
It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
We've seen all ways of dealing with lockdown, but lockdown itself is it's a long-lasting thing.
And it's an isolation period. People are isolated from each other. I mean, people in the old age homes have not even seen their families yet. So yes, initially we thought, no, this is a good idea. Let's isolate for a few weeks. It was extended. And now it's open-ended. We do not know when this will end. And this culminates into a highly stressful situation.
In normal circumstances, and Antoinette, I think you'll agree with this, in normal circumstances, it's difficult to keep people focused. I mean, we've moved beyond the annual strategic session towards an approach where you try to get a strategic discourse going in the workplace, and you constantly want people reminded of where they're heading, performance appraisals, for instance, not just an annual thing or twice a year or whatever. There's a continuance in the discussion of it. But now, even that process has been disrupted.
Yeah, there's a complete disruption of routine, the business process routine. What helped us also is the school holidays. It gave us a natural cycle of when to rest, when to take a break. Even that is disrupted. So now we're taking time here and there, but most of the people working from home do not have a routine. There's no boundaries.
I agree.
Yeah, so that makes it difficult to manage the time of rest.
So, and even if you then go into the office from time to time, the household routine with schools closed, etc., that continues to be disrupted.
Yeah.
So now you move from a disrupted environment to another disrupted environment.
Yeah.
It's as if the complexities of what we have to deal with is just compounded.
Yeah.
It's the one after the other.
Yeah. And if I may, I would just like to share some of the symptoms that employees can portray. So the three situations: pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. Now, pre-COVID, I do not need to explain. It's the freedom of movement, unlimited activities. We could do as we want. While during COVID, now we are restricted. We're in isolation, where crime was our most primary source of trauma previously. Now it's our threat to health. And what we find in this table here, which is based on research, which we will talk about a bit later, of our postgraduate students. And this is typically reactions that you can expect. And I hear this quite a lot in people who contact me and who wish to talk about this in a counseling setup, is more headaches, body aches, lack of energy. If we look there at the emotions, I hear a lot of people saying that they feel depressed. They are not a depressive type of person. They are angry at all these restrictions, but they cannot be angry at anybody specifically. And the loneliness, working from home, and a lot of meaning that goes with that. Lack of concentration. Interestingly, behaviorally, we make a lot of jokes about the alcohol and the cigarette ban. But what happened in effect is some people were in forced rehab, especially during the extreme lockdown period. People were at home and they were in a rehabilitation situation. But also culturally, there's a lot of changes that we saw, but there's also a sense of group cohesion. We are in this together, and we need to get through this together.
Antoinette, what Lene is mentioning now, did you also see it in your environment?
Yes, we're definitely experiencing within the businesses that staff are demotivated. It has really become a situation at one point where your whole work day is sort of controlled by COVID compliance. You need to sanitize everything constantly. You need to wear your mask. So what we've done to just get everybody back to basics as well is just to have a few informal sessions with only a few staff, just to get back to what is our culture, what is our values, what must we also focus on. Yes, we must focus on COVID. And yes, COVID is currently important, but we also need to get back to the basics and remember who we are and where we are going as a business, so that we can also stabilize the business environment and make it a bit more stable for employees, so that they do also, hopefully in their subconscious, realize that eventually this will end. And as long as we can stabilize the business now and keep it going, we will have jobs going forward, which I think also creates a lot of insecurity and fear, job insecurity and the fear of, will I have a job, will I not have a job, the economy is going down, that type of thing.
This is wonderful because it means that you've done something tangible with these small group discussions that you're mentioning now to keep people aligned towards the organizational strategy, keep them focused on the processes that you follow, etc., etc. So kudos, that's a nice initiative, something nice to do.
Yeah, we had at one of our companies, we had a Friday pizza and Coke outside, and then we just celebrated the small successes. Like within our business, there's a lot of additional challenges caused by COVID-19 with other COVID case or the municipality closing for a week because of COVID cases, and we had to find some way of getting the work done so that we can continue to work. So we realized that everybody is a bit negative, but there's still a lot of positive things. And sometimes it's important to just celebrate the small successes. Maybe we're not moving mountains at the moment, but in every day, there's still something to be positive about. There's still something to be thankful for. So, yeah, and what we've also seen is, or try to do is to tell the employees that at the moment, we're okay. I don't think you stress about your job. Relax. If you need to start stressing, we will inform you. And at some of the companies more rockier, we're telling them, look, it is very difficult. We do need to look after every cent. Everybody needs to give their 110%, but relax. We will tell you in advance. We will not just lay you off and tomorrow you don't have a job. We will keep you informed and we will give you advance notice if it should go to that.
I'm going to ask you a little bit later on about performance management, because I think the phrase you used now was, we're not moving mountains at this point in time. And in certain industries, this lack of performance has a knock-on effect onto the basic survival of the business, which is a challenge. But we'll come back to the performance management a little bit later on. Lene, back to the anxiety that we experience, and you've heard the examples that Antoinette now mentioned. There are a few of these things that we can do to deal with the uncertainty and the anxiety. From some of the managers that I've spoken to, they say that their greatest problem is people come to them with questions. What's going to happen? Is there job security? What does the future hold? And they themselves do not know. Yeah. They need to manage the uncertainty. So my advice was always, listen, then be honest, and deal with what you can now. What you can convey and what you can do to assure, do that now.
What you're saying and what Antoinette just says, I want to link with the person I referred to earlier, Mark Roberge, the Harvard professor. He actually said something that I so like. He said that in this time that we should create 2 to 3 touch points more than we had. So in the past, you would have 1 touch point. You will have a meeting, an office meeting, where everybody would get their coffee, you would get together, or you had a braai, Fridays or whatever. Now he says increase that to 2 to 3 touch points. You are not seeing that employee in the hallway. making eye contact, looking in the person's eyes and seeing, but you're not fine. Let's have a coffee. Let's talk about this. So increase that and increase the communication, even if you do not have the answers. I don't think an employee would like you saying, I don't know, but if you can say, I hear you, and I hear this is concerning to you, you are uncertain, you are wondering what you should do, the employee feels he's being heard. And that already takes a load off, a weight off. And then from there, we can start looking at planning interventions and what to do. So the employee does not know the employer is making the plans and wondering about what to do, feeling anxious himself, but he's feeling he's being heard. So that 2 to 3 touch points, I think, is a nice idea, just to keep in touch with the employee's needs.
To those of you watching the webinar, we have a poll running. If you'd like to pay attention to that and vote, I think throughout the webinar we'll have 2. So just have a look at that, and you're more than welcome to pose a few questions. We have the 2 experts here. If you have a unique situation and you'd like to hear their perspectives on it, feel free to type. We'll get to your questions just now. All right, so let's get to the specific interventions available to us. What can we do to keep things together now in the workplace? Now, Antoinette, you have a few very specific and practical solutions on offer.
Yes, GP, so what we've done, we have a few different types of businesses. So initially in the hard lockdown, where some of our business could not operate at all, we claimed from the TASH, the temporary relief scheme for the employees for top-ups. And certain of the other businesses, employees were put on reduced time. So we also claimed for them from the TASH top-ups. Like I've mentioned, it really takes a lot of resilience to claim from TASH. I think there's a lot of frustration out there with processes that's not working. And I do just want to motivate businesses to not give up, to just continue reapplying, applying to, eventually, I do think you will get results if you just stay resilient and keep on trying with regard to that. And then we've informed the employees that the most important thing that we can actually do for them is to make sure that we stabilize the businesses, that we preserve cash, so that in the long term, we preserve jobs. So that is to also give them a bit of certainty around that. And then we've tried to guide the employees to say, have a look at your budget, relook your budget, relook your expenses. If you have a bond or a vehicle financing or you have other credit, contact your bank, contact your credit provider, let them know in advance if you're going to run into problems. There was a lot of banks that had payment holidays for credit. Also, as you know, the interest rate has gone down a lot. So we've also encouraged them to renegotiate with their bank. Some of them had perhaps fixed interest rates. So we've asked them, renegotiate with your bank, talk to them, see where you can renegotiate payments and interest rates. And then, here and there we have had to lay off staff. So we inquired who wanted to be voluntarily laid off. We had some staff members that were older than 65 who felt it was a bit dangerous for them during this COVID period. And where we had to lay off staff, we tried to assist them by helping them to register on the online U-filing so that they could claim, so that we could assist them to complete the application for UIF online. I can share the screen with you where there's the links that they can visit to claim for TASH. And yes, so there's links where they can visit the TASH website and the UIF website. And then another thing that the government put in place was to say that the employee tax incentive, which was usually up to 29, was extended to everybody up to 65 years. So that's basically what we've done on the financial side of that. And I think I'm going to hand over to you again.
The thing for me is the range of options. You know, I always say, for me, a rich person, a wealthy person is someone with options. You know, they have a range of options available to base their decisions on. And once we feel anxious, I often feel, what should I do? I've run out of options. And then my anxiety makes the whole thing worse. I struggle to think, I struggle to come up with different options. And these options that you've mentioned now, Antoinette, it's part of, I suppose, a range of accounting or financial options available to ensure that the business is still alive.
Yes, no, that is true. I'd also like to share with you, we really motivated our staff during the initial hard lockdown, when a lot of them could not work, or they could work a bit from home, but I mean, we didn't have a lot of work that they could do from home, to use that time to study. So we had quite a few staff members do courses on Udemy. We had one staff member do an advanced course in YouTube. We even had a staff member do a course on how to make masks, and he ended up selling a lot of masks for a bit of extra income. And he also ended up making about 150 masks for our businesses, which then saved us, money, to put it like that, because he was already an employee and we could utilize that new skill that he had learned. We even had a staff member during this difficult time who had to move, and she's studying a law degree. She actually managed to get a distinction for one of her subjects. So I think we tried to motivate them to also use this additional time positively and productively, and to enhance their personal skills, so that if they do need to look for something, then hopefully they are a bit better equipped to do that.
Antoinette, you've touched on learning, so I'm going to ask the professor in just a short while to comment on that, because it's a wonderful time now to reflect a little bit and get geared to learn and perhaps enroll for something a bit more structured. But just a question that came up here, what if the employer does not apply for all these things? What if the employer does not act on the options that you've listed here and that you've shown us on the slide? What can the employee do?
Okay, so if the employer did not claim from the TASH fund for the employee can claim from TASH for themselves. For them to do that, they can register online on uFiling. So it's very easy. They can just go to www.ufiling.co.za and register there. And then there's an option where they can online apply for TASH relief. That is if they were are working reduced hours, or they are on. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Or they are on unpaid leave, then they can claim for themselves from the TASH fund.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. Antoinette, you've mentioned now on learning. I think it's opportune, whilst we have the Northwest University involved here, to talk about specific things that you can keep yourself busy with. What I always say about learning, whether it's a formal, structured learning, such as a degree, or informal learning, it increases your range of options. All of a sudden, you engage with experts, and you start learning a little bit more. Talk to us about some of the products on offer, the degrees on offer in industrial psychology and labor relations, labor management, and human resource management.
Yes. Just to give a step back perhaps, and that is if an employee is not doing fine, like I said previously, creativity decreases and there's no concentration and creativity, and you really do not feel like learning anything. You're merely surviving and coping. So I think a first step would be to take responsibility and to act on that and ask for help.
You yourself?
Yeah, you yourself, as let's say employee. And later on, I will share some places where you can ask for help. And I think as an employer is to really keep an eye out on the well-being of the employee and to see how I can help you increase your creativity. Like Antoinette said, they saw how employees studied things, were creative, made masks even. And on that note, it always amazes me the resiliency of people. You know, through adversity, you will always see something good follow. There's a people thriving using what they are going through to find meaning. On that note, I would like to share a study of just going to skip to that, which brings me actually to the last word. I perhaps should just conclude with that. The togetherness, keeping it together. So together would be a joint effort, like I've just said, employee and employer. And what does that mean? If I can refer to this framework, which was a study conducted, a PhD study in industrial psychology, what you can do is to increase your knowledge on the matter at hand. And typically here is a framework that organizations can use. Let's call it a toolkit. So what can the organization do during this time? And that is create awareness, increase awareness of what is available. How can I help you? What are the wellness policies, for example, and the touch points that I mentioned? This specific study, which was in a mining industry, the participants said they want to see their management. They want to see them more visible during a trying time. Go and visit the employees, give them a phone call, even a personalized email. And then the immediate needs. Are you okay? Are you safe? Are you healthy? What's very interesting in this study is that if the job demands increase, but I feel I have enough resources, I'm okay. Even if I'm working harder, even if life is tougher. And then follow up. And what teams can do in this instance is give them information, education on symptoms of what they might experience now. Burnout symptoms or symptoms of stress. Strengthen the teams, give them colleague support, that 2 to 3 touch points that I mentioned earlier. And do not shy away from individual interventions. If someone is not doing fine, refer them to a counselor. The contact details I will give later on. And then something I have implemented in my own office is a buddy system. I assigned a buddy to each staff member to look after each other and flag someone to me because I might miss it. So these are the typical interventions that was conducted in this PhD study. The reference is there. If we look at human resource management degrees that we are offering there, these focus on the policies and the guidelines that can assist employers in their management of human resources in their companies, while looking at labor relations management. For example, what is the psychological contract that the employer has with the employee that might be violated in this time? So this is typical knowledge that you can skill yourself with by learning further and doing these degrees.
You know, the thing about a full dissertation is that even though it's just a dissertation, it's not a modular or structured course. It has specific components in it.
Yeah.
And the typical chapter 2, the literature study, opens up on the scope within the body of knowledge.
It's the richness.
The richness of it.
Yeah.
And then later on you get to a point where you do the contribution to the body of knowledge, if that is your aim.
Practical implication, like now. What do we do with this?
But I've always thought, you know, if we can, even if you can't stop at chapter 2, but even if you would stop there, it's incredible just to go through it.
Yeah.
It opens up your world.
Yeah.
It really elicits so many options for you. So it's worth your while to engage in something like this.
Yeah, and to explore the theory on the implication of COVID in the workplace, keeping it together.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but there's richness in it, and there's a lot of help in it.
And in terms of throughput, you'll be done with the masters in about 2 years. Some take 3 years and so on. It sounds like a long time, but the process that you go through is one of both engagement with literature, but also individual growth as you learn.
Yeah. And the thing is, what we are looking at nowadays is with the fourth industrial revolution and all the AI that we get, is that it can even be faster. We have programs that assist us with literature reviews and the data analysis and so on. So actually it is becoming faster to get the research out there so that it's applied and worthwhile for people in the workplace.
Now, the study you've spoken about now, the context you mentioned was mining.
Yeah, it was high-risk occupations, actually.
Oh.
So mining, policing, medical industry, medical sector. And so, yeah, for now, actually, it's very relative. It's the process of applying this now is actually very relevant.
Yeah. Antoinette, you've heard Lene speak about the buddy system. I like that, you know. I'm going to also get a buddy now. I think, you know, just to check in and are you still okay and so on. And in a chamber of commerce, that was also always for me a value, you know, knowing that there are other people going through what I'm going through in business, and that I can collaborate and converse with in order to share a few ideas.
Yes, Gepe, I think this webinar is now in conjunction with the NWU and the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce. So I think from the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce, we would really like to motivate businesses to join the Chamber of Commerce. I will share a screen now with the links. But there's a lot of benefits to joining the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce. There's obviously networking benefits. There's webinars such as this, so it can be a learning experience. And post-COVID, I'm sure we will have networking breakfasts again. And also, it is like you said, then there is a network of people that you can contact when you have questions, or there's just knowing there's somebody that you can phone that maybe is probably going through the same thing that your business is going through, or how do you address this with your staff, or like I had a lot of questions around like some of the assistance that we tried to give our employees was for them we could buy back some leave or prepay some of their bonuses, which I actually had a lot of questions about, and then I knew there was, you know, other people that I could phone and ask them. So, and then also the Chamber of Business Commerce currently has a campaign that they are running, Pro Potch. So the whole idea behind Pro Potch is to support local businesses so that we can grow our local economy. It's to support the local industry, then there's more spending in your local economy, which will grow your local economy, which in turn will create more job security within Potchefstroom. So it's for all businesses. Even if you're not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, you can join Pro Potch. It is free. If you want to join the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce, I always thought it was extremely expensive. And actually, it's really affordable. It is 550 Rand a year for small to medium enterprises to join the Potchefstroom Chamber of Commerce. That's about 45 Rand a month for all the benefits of obtaining a network, for educational webinars such as this, keeping it together in the workplace. I'm going to share the links now where you can join the Chamber of Commerce, as well as like our Facebook page. So there, let me just start slideshow. Can you see the screen, Gepe?
Yes, I can see it.
So there's join Potchefstroom Sakekamer or Chamber of Commerce at that link, and join Pro Potch. Like I said, there's no costs to joining Pro Potch for the basic package, and support local so that we can grow our local economy and make sure that Potchefstroom will have longevity and stay a great town to live in. And then please like our Facebook page.
Just go to the next page on your slideshow, the second page, because we're seeing the first one now.
Are you seeing the dash, or can you see it now?
We're seeing the dash one.
Okay. Let me stop sharing that and then let's just see.
Yeah. So whilst you're looking for that, I just want to give some feedback on the poll that we have now. We asked, what's your most urgent concern? And it was overwhelmingly 2/3 said an inability to plan ahead in an uncertain climate. So Antoinette, it's wonderful to see the Chamber of Commerce helping exactly in that, creating a space where we can talk about these things and engage with it. I know that you are very open and accessible bunch of people. So it's good that we know of you and we know that we have doors to knock on. Lene, coming back to you, I mean, here you hear it, and inability to plan in uncertain times, and I suppose the inability is more so than just we can't get people together. It has a lot to do with the uncertainty of the future. We just don't know.
Exactly. And what's so important here is that organizations should understand that if they show their commitment to employees, that helps a lot. So what Antoinette said, I very much like is, let's talk about buying back leave. Let's talk about your bonus and how we're going to manage this. That gives certainty. So just to give certain touch points of certainty to employees and employers, I understand the anxiety of what's going to happen next, where are we going, what is the economy going to do. But the fact that we can have this webinar and tell each other these are a few steps, these are a few persons you can contact. And the most important thing that I just want to reiterate today is it is normal. It is a worldwide phenomenon. So uncertainty and also a sense of loss of life as we knew it is normal to experience that. Which actually, Antoinette said that, and I would just like to share, this is my last screen actually, and that is post-COVID. We know about a term in psychology, post-traumatic growth, and which always astounds me is how people get through a time of adversity. And I'm seeing this now, I'm hearing this now amongst people that I'm talking to, and that is what we're finding is that, yes, it's tough, but we are also thriving in terms of I'm reconnecting with my family. I'm having family life, increased family life, good time, quality time spent together. There's a greater appreciation for life. There's a strengthening of close relationships and an increased compassion and altruism. I find when I reach out to someone in the workplace, they reply back, keep safe. I hope you are healthy. You know, there's a mutual feeling of altruism, showing altruism. Then an identification of new possibilities, creative ways. We are seeing new things happening around us that's so creative that would not have happened if we did not go through this adversity. So from my side, I just want to say that just to keep hope, and take one day at a time. Reach out to someone like we are having this webinar today, giving contact details. I will share mine as well. Actually, I can share that screen. Yes, there it is. There's a list of people that can be contacted. Apart from your own HR department, have a reference list, a referral list, even if it's just a general practitioner, a name of a counselor. There's a suicide crisis line, which is a reality. People are actually saying, I don't think it's worthwhile going on anymore. And before you reach that stage, reach out, contact someone. There is a lifeline. And lastly, there's also our contact details of the School of Industrial Psychology, Human Resource Management. This is our profession. This is what we are doing, assisting, helping, opening up new doors, and to use this contact details we are sharing today.
It so often happens in life that the moment you start reaching out in an attempt to help and to aid others, you aid yourself.
Yes.
It has a definite kickback effect.
And the thing is, if I tell you today, you know what, I am actually not fine, the probability is very high that you're going to tell me, me too. And then there's a sense of normalcy. Okay, so we feel like this, talking about it, what's next? And taking that first step, helping each other perhaps.
Let's conclude, Antoinette. We've reached the end of the webinar almost. A few final thoughts from your side. I mean, people going back to work now. It's Thursday. They're looking forward to Friday. What can we do now? What's the next step?
Well, I think it's important for business owners and for their employees. I think it's important to make sure you stabilize your business as much as possible, preserve cash as much as possible, to ensure the longevity and to ensure that after this, your staff still have jobs. I mean, we need to be realistic. We are in a difficult situation, and it will probably last still for a few months. But the other thing that I want to mention is that the chairperson of the Chamber of Commerce, Jonathan Baron, often mentions that if you have had a business during the last 10 years in South Africa, you are already very resilient. It is not as if we have had the greatest economy in the past 10 years. So if you could have made it through that, then the chances are very good that you can make it through this. I think South Africa as a nation is very resilient, and we must remember that. We must come back to the basics. Focus on the basics. And I think also another important thing is to remember to say thank you to your employees. A thank you goes a long way to keep everybody positive and feeling that there is a way forward. And there is definitely a way forward. We are positive about the economy. We are positive about recovery. And it is also like Elena said, the entire world is in this situation. When they talk about the economy that is contracting, the whole world economy is contracting. So I don't think we should see it necessarily as a negative space only for South Africa. Be resilient and remember that tomorrow the sun will still shine.
Thank you, Antoinette. Lene, perhaps a few final thoughts from your side, something that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I can just echo what Antoinette says. And the thing is that we are currently having a feeling of we are surviving. But from surviving comes thriving. And there's always hope, and to reach out to each other. This is now the time where we should do that. And to be hope carriers, to say that, yes, this is what we are going through, but keep heart, take heart, and keep hope.
So thank you, Lene, and thank you, Antoinette. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few sessions planned for what's to come later on, perhaps a few other webinars. If you have more questions, feel free to contact us. We have access to experts. You've heard now today that the issues that people grapple with, we've studied at the Northwest University. We are studying and we're going to study. So those options are available. The Chamber of Commerce, an excellent platform to partake in and to participate in. So engage with us. We are here for you. And if there are specific topics that you'd like us to deal a little bit more in depth with, then we'll do so. But for today, thank you so much. Thank you to Prof. Lene. Thank you so much for chatting with us today and sharing your knowledge. And to Antoinette as well. Antoinette, good luck with business. What was the closing line? Stay safe.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you all at our next webinar.